We're off to a fantastic start, guys. So it says, we're off to a fantastic start. It says, J.K. Rowling criticized for launching discriminatory women's-only service for sexual abuse victims. I said the word, unfortunately.
And it's called Bira's Place. It's named after a Scottish goddess of the winter time, I think.
All right.
This is women's only, not people who identify as women only, but biological women only, if we even have to place a qualifier there. Now, this is not her first trek into philanthropy, but it's going to be probably the highest profile because of her controversial statements on gender ideology. And I can't tell whether this is more of an attention grab or if it comes from a good place. But either way, I think based on what we've seen in this story, that Scotland has other women's centers that are overrun, that have waiting lists, they have to turn people away. It'll do good unintentionally, whether or not she has the best intent in doing this.
I want to go back to what you just said. You were saying before that you said, you mean she's saying sex, but gender ideology, what you just said before this.
Right before
yes. You said, does it make a difference? It does. Like what I found is that a lot of what goes on is conflation between biological sex and gender ideology, which is hilarious because that's exactly what they want. The people that are complaining about this stuff want it to be confusing.
Something funny I'm seeing in response to this is like, I'm going to finally boycott Harry Potter because of this. And it's like, if you weren't doing that already, you probably really like Harry Potter and you should just enjoy what you love.
Yeah. Actually, it's kind of funny.
And shut up about it.
Of all the things that make you stop, it's a clinic. It's literally it's an abuse shelter.
No, someone literally tweeted, I have full reason to boycott Harry Potter now. Another person said, reminder that your attachment to Harry Potter is not more important than trans lives. Another person said, J.K. Rowling is ontologically evil. What a C word. I will never understand how people still unapologetically support her.
Imagine the absolute gall to use ontologically.
You don't even know what that word means, babe. Like, you're on Stan Twitter.
I love
and you can go ahead and boycott Harry Potter. You can boycott this women's refuge or any other projects or books that J.K. Rowling comes up with in her career. But ultimately, she won't care. And she is still richer than everyone who's criticizing her right now.
Also, it doesn't explicitly ban trans people, from what I understand. It's just assumed that it will because of her stance.
So a spokesperson, first off, points off for both of you for not using the Timcast link.
I have it here.
We do this to everyone who works here if they reference a news article that someone on our team has written about.
Not in my control. Not in my control.
It's okay. It's not a big deal. But one of the things that I would note is there are a couple points that make this situation nuanced, which is that
there it is. Perfect.
See, it's like when you force your parents to hang your artwork on your
fridge.
on
the fridge. It's great.
So they did have a spokesperson come out and specifically say this is a center that is offering female, meaning women, survivors of sexual violence, a place where they will not come into contact with a man, biological man.
See, that's
and
a big
so
part
if
of
there,
this
hold on. So if there is someone who comes there for services, they will be directed to a different place wherever appropriate. It's also all men and biological, anyone who identifies as a trans woman would be directed somewhere else. So they will not treat themselves, but they will help connect trans people with other resources. Notably, the Scottish Health Services, they had this reaction that was like, yeah, I mean, that's good because we do have too many people in need right now. I mean, and we offer... It's not like this is the only resource for trans identifying people, right? The Scottish Health Services takes a really liberal view of gender ideology, and they offer rape, crisis counseling, sexual assault, violence. They offer services like that already to trans identifying people. So this is also not a charity. It's not a nonprofit. It's completely privately funded by J.K. Rowling. So you couldn't have an activist who says you shouldn't be able to do that. Trans women are women. Petition the government.
She holds all the power.
To punish them. Right. Yeah. She gets to do this however she wants to.
I saw that there were other board members, but is J.K. Rowling really the only person funding this?
Yeah, she's
like the singular person funding this.
It doesn't.
Does she want funding from anyone else?
No, it doesn't. It's so
the whole point is that
this is one of having to comply with any other ordinance. So part of it is that the Scottish government is considering legislation that makes it so So right now in Scotland, you have to be diagnosed with gender dysphoria by a psychiatrist to be able to apply for a certificate of gender identity. So it basically says, like, if you're a biological man and you think you're a woman, you have to convince a psychiatrist, they diagnose you, and the government will then be like, here, from now on, you can be legally recognized by the gender of your mind's choosing. This is something that most of the board members and J.K. Rowling has specifically spoken out against, because they say there are places that current legislation permits to be single sex, and this will then violate this, because you won't have people having to verify. You have to provide them service, even if they just say, you know, I feel like I'm a woman. You know, if you're a gender fluid person's like, well, today I'm a woman, so I want to use a woman's locker room, or a, you know, like, one of the problems becomes like prisons. It gets really macro, but this is coming up against a question of, like, how does Scotland as a government think about gender holistically? And it's sort of a preemptive step. She did this interview that was really, J.K. Rowling did this interview that was really interesting, saying, like, I was extremely angry about this upcoming legislation, and then I realized I could do something about it. And so this is her doing something about it, which I applaud. Like, if you
so like one
of the criticisms that they were getting is, this is a private limited liability company, they're not registered as a nonprofit charity, therefore J.K. Rowling is going to shield herself from the consequences if things go wrong for patients. They're also pointing out that the website for Bira's Place is marked as insecure on multiple browsers right now, and therefore they're saying it's vulnerable to get hacked and have survivor information leaked. But probably if that happened, it would be by nefarious actors from gender ideology camps. So right, I don't know why they would point that out. I don't know that
you can trust, I mean, in this day of, like, technological warfare from, like, one-sided politics, I don't know that you can trust something that's marking a website insecure, right? Like, if you're looking at it in your Google Chrome browser, which has a left-leaning bias already, of course they think this thing is insecure because they don't like it. I'm not saying that's what's going on. I'm just suggesting.
I have no idea why it says that.
Exactly.
But the website on their frequently asked questions page was answering the question, why is Bira's Place for women only? The answer is, our service is offered in accordance with the Equality Act of 2010, which permits the provision of single-sex services for women in various situations where there is good reason for them. And then they provide all of these examples of scientific evidence that this is helpful for victims of abuse. So basically all the people whining on Twitter are ignoring the evidence.
Yes.
And they hate J.K. Rowling to begin with before this news ever came out, and they're just looking for more reasons to trash her.
One thing one paragraph that I love, the one that signaled clown world to me, was this one. It says, all victims of sexual abuse and assault need support, love, and help. They need facilities to help them with their traumas that they have faced. I'd be praising setting up a refuge if it wasn't rooted in turning some women away.
Yeah.
It's
another person that I think it's actually quite telling to the vindictive nature of J.K. Rowling that she's had the means, resources, and power to set up a crisis center for over 20 years, and she's only decided to do it now so she can use it as some bizarre point scoring against trans victims. Do you realize that 20 years ago, yes, when she had, or even 10 years ago, when she had the power and resources to create a center like this, the culture was not in the same place it is now. Therefore, the need wouldn't have existed as much as it does now. Yep. The legislation that you were talking about, Hannah Claire, was not about to get passed, and therefore there was not as much of an urgent need for something where they're dedicated to a very specific pool of victims.
I'd also say that she has a history of philanthropic activity, whether you agree with them or not. I know she has a different nonprofit that specifically works on adoption issues in the UK. I mean, just because 10, 20 years ago this was not her philanthropic focus, I don't see an argument for she should never join this fight, right? If Scotland doesn't have the resources to provide care for people in these situations, why wouldn't you ask a private institution to be involved in it? Like, I think we should have people who have the resources and power doing as much as they can to serve their communities in as many ways as possible. Just because she didn't already do it doesn't mean that she shouldn't now. It doesn't really make sense.
I also thought it was interesting that Mr. Radcliffe, Daniel Radcliffe, responded on the Trevor Project website, which is an organization that provides 24/7.
They have Daniel Radcliffe on a leash over there at the Trevor Project. They get his public statements on like clockwork on their website.
I've always thought he was dating someone involved with it.
Like, what is going on there? there.
And my point here is that they're allowed to have their groups specific to their causes. She is not, according to them.
Well, when they say, like, go make your own thing, go do your own thing, stop encroaching on what we do, then you do that.
And they follow you.
Every single time follow you to your new project and tell you that it should be banned, or they want to pass legislation to make it illegal. Whatever you do, you won't escape their constant watch.
And oddly enough, it ends up deflecting the problems of bad men in this situation, because it's no longer about what men are doing to how men are abusing women. It's become about this, which is, like a tiny amount of the population compared to the women that are actually likely being abused by their male counterparts, right? So now you're not talking about what actually matters, which is the abuse that women are suffering at the hands of, I guess it doesn't have to just be men, but it could be, I'm guessing that the majority of those cases would be at the hand of other men.
Even when it's trans victims.
Although same-sex female
know,
relationships have extremely high rates of domestic violence.
But the point is that it
like,
deflects.
Stop it, I've already heard that talking point.
But I'm saying, but the point is that it's deflecting the point away, so then the men get, the bad men get off the hook here, because we're not even talking about that issue. We're just talking about something that isn't really relevant, because it shouldn't even matter, because it's not anybody's business but hers, what she does with a business she builds and starts on her own.
Right. There was this disingenuous criticism of her shelter saying, J.K. Rowling doesn't believe men get abused too. That's completely intellectually dishonest. To say that care. You're not recognizing all other problems that exist in the world by focusing on finding solutions for one of them.
And let's face it,
that's such a lie.
Whoever that person was doesn't give a crap if men get abused.
Right.
They're also using it as a cudgel.
Like, really, if we are hoping to actively serve the people in these situations, whether they be male or female, right, we would look at this like a specialist. If you have cancer, you can go to the doctor and they might be able to help you, but really they'll direct you to an oncologist.
Yes.
If you are a woman facing domestic violence and you live in Scotland that is already strapped for resources, it would be nice to have another specialized option, especially if you feel extremely uncomfortable being treated by a man in any way, right? What if the only caseworker the state has available to you is a man, and that in some ways, makes you feel like, especially if you're a victim of domestic violence, like, you should be able to work with a woman if that resource is provided to you by a private organization.
Well, also, it's like the women that are going here aren't going to necessarily, the women that are being brought to these shelters aren't necessarily in line with her politically as far as this issue. They're just women that have been abused. You're punishing these women by trying to shut this clinic down.
Because you don't like J.K. Rowling's tweets.
Right. And isn't there someone else who is pro the trans community who could start a specific shelter for them? Like, that doesn't mean that no one else. They do exist, and that doesn't mean no one else can do this. Like, let her serve a small specific a community of affected women without it being a threat to your community, which also has access to care already.
They don't believe that, though. They believe that anything that doesn't include them is considered a threat to their community and not inclusive.
Which is so insecure. Like, if the government recognized you enough to devote taxpayer resources towards you, and one private organization is like, well, since you guys already have something, we're going to focus on this. Like, it's not a threat to you. You have to get over yourself.
There's one criticism of this that I think actually should bear a mention. They've found that J.K. Rowling selected one board member who has experience running a women's prison called Corton Vale, which has I think failed to pass certain inspections because they imposed poor conditions on female inmates. Yeah. I don't know much about that situation because
I just don't understand the connection to Bira's place, right? Bira's place.
She's one of the board members.
Yeah, but she's not a prison, and she's on the board. Like, she's not the director of it. Like, I get what you're saying. It's worth noting her background.
Well, they think it's hypocritical that maybe J.K. Rowling didn't look into this woman's history,
but also, like,
and her implication.
Did the person leveling this accusation look into why the person has failed the inspections? Like,
obviously
it's serious, but it's like this thing where they're grasping for straws, right? They're like, well, here's some bad press about someone who's sort of associated with this. Like, she's not even the director of Bira's place. Like,
sure.
I just hate that we're always trying to ruin, like, potentially positive things, right?
If it is all about, like, I don't want good news. I want bad news all the time, every day. They're addicted to finding new reasons to be angry. One person said, I'm sure if J.K. Rowling single-handedly saved children from a burning building, then Pink News readers would accuse her of neglecting firefighters. No matter what she says or does, some people always look for an issue.
This is what, I mean, this was kind of born out of Trump times, right? Where everything he did was bad no matter what. But I do have good news.
Wait, hold on. My last point is, I think it's funny because you can boycott Harry Potter for whatever reason you want. Like, if you feel like she's mean to trans people, you can boycott it.
Yeah.
If you don't like that she said Albus Dumbledore is gay, you could also boycott it. Also the witchcraft thing. Like, this woman cannot do anything but lose. I'm not even a huge fan, but like, this is clearly a positive thing. Like, privately funded, it's not going to cost anyone else anything, and it can really help people in need. Like, why do we have to be like, she didn't do it exactly right, so this is awful?
Well, that's because they're being intellectually dishonest, and they're not mad that she didn't do it exactly right. They're mad that she didn't do it exactly like them.
She's made literally every camp mad. She's made the religious right angry. She's made a lot of right-wingers who don't like the, you know, retroactively changing the storyline to make Dumbledore gay thing. They don't like the race swapping Hermione thing. And then now she has this new camp that's mad at her about not agreeing with gender ideology. It's just like, this woman can't make everyone happy, nor does she want to. She said herself, I get my checks at the end of the day. I don't care what you say.
And speaking of those checks, she bought an island from Johnny Depp, guys. So she's winning either way. I
love this headline, by the way.
Forced to escape painful Amber Heard memories, Johnny Depp sells gargantuan Bahamas island to J.K. Rowling, makes a $72 million profit. He bought it for like...
Do you think it's that he is escaping memories or trying to rebuild his bank account?
Well, he sold it for he made $72 million profit. He bought it for like just a couple of million. It says down here, however, all the good memories combined weren't enough to deter Depp from selling his private island. The ghosts of his relationship with Amber Heard were simply too much. I feel like this is being written with snark. And
he bought it for $3.6 million and just sold it for $75 million. That's insane.
She should
Real estate is really going up lately.
She should have bought the island and donated it to trans people. I don't know what she was doing.
Well, she should have built the clinic there on the island.
It'd be hard for the women of Scotland to get there.
You just need to swim.
You gotta fly him out there.
Wait, why did she choose Scotland? Do you know?
That's where she lives, in Edinburgh.
Is she from there?
No, she's not from there, but that's where she lives.
Oh, okay.
So, you know what? At least she's got her island that she now owns. So she can laugh on her island, on her own private beach, while everyone's mad at her all the time. Literally all. Do you think
I can't help but feel smug just on her behalf.
Do you think like when she's having a bad day, she's like, oh my God, people are so mean to me on Twitter. I think I'm going to go to my island and unwind. Like, I imagine.
I like it she's QVC online shopping, except it's like crazy rich people version.
Yeah, she bought this island at 2 a.m. because somebody said something particularly like hurtful on Twitter.
I just like that she's like, I saw a problem and I did something. Yeah. I feel like there are so many people complaining, and like, good for her for taking the heat. Like, she knew this was going to happen when she made this mission specific. Obviously, she's picked her board members who share her opposition to upcoming legislation. Like, I think it's so easy to say that things should be different or that we should do something. And I think if she has the resources to put them towards community good, we should applaud her for that.
Also, it seems like when American celebrities try to do stuff like this, they either do it in tandem with the government or they expect the government to do this stuff. They just virtue signal about it. They don't actually do anything about it other than maybe make a donation to a previously already run charity that has dubious intent and board members that get way more money than anybody that's actually helped via the charity.
Yeah, this is why you don't round up when they ask you if you want to round up, because you don't have the information on where it's going.
Well, and plus like you should never round up when they ask you to round up purely out of the guilt trip.
Right.
Like, just because
do you want to round up to feed this? I'm showing you a picture of this starving child.
Yeah.
And if you don't, you're a bad person.
I also love it's like there's the meme I posted there. It's like, would you like to round up to help feed poor people? It's like, I'm poor people. Like, I'm the poor person. I can't round up.
I also like that she did found this where she lives, because she's seeing a community problem and focusing on solutions in her proximity. That's where your circle of influence is.
I never want to feel mean, but it really does feel like one of those things where you complain at, like, they're complaining about something, and then when you leave to go do your own thing away from the complaining, they follow you to continue complaining about the thing they have nothing to do with.
And nothing she's doing takes away from resources that are already offered to that community. Like, I cannot stress this enough. Yes, it's an LLC. That's totally normal in business to have something that protects you from liability. I think that she's not asking for taxpayer money. The government's not involved. No national health workers are being taken away from this. Like, it's
even
its
then,
own thing that offers
those health workers have a free right, have their own right to make more
but
money working elsewhere.
But like, she is not diverting resources that are already open to this specific community that's angry with her. She's just offering more resources.
She does like a thing like a Burger King and McDonald's. She opens it up right next door to like one that does include trans people. Like just to like, she starts opening them up opposite regular clinics.
But I honestly hope she does that because I bet a lot of these clinics have extremely long waiting lines.
I've
also if you're already uncomfortable, you can just go next door and get help. Like, that's good.
I've heard that some of these clinics that are stretched thin in Scotland are also known for implementing re-education on survivors about gender ideology if they have,
and that's government.
So J.K. Rowling specifically talked about this in her interview ahead of Beer's Place opening or being announced. She said that the leading, I have to look at my article to pull it up, but one of the leading government figures on this issue went on a pro-feminist podcast and said, like, while people are there, we can re-educate them on their transphobic views. And that was what triggered this whole thing. She was like, why is that necessary? Why can't you just offer
how does that help them heal?
It's adorable that people are like finally figuring out that the government isn't there to help them.
Yeah.
It's adorable to see them catch up. So thanks for watching this clip, guys. If you want to see full episodes or follow us on social media, links are in the description below. Bye.